Okay, so once again, good morning everyone or good day. So this time what we're going to discuss is about the employee relations, no? Employee or employment relation is concerned with managing the employment relation in general, with the focus on terms and conditions of employment, issues that arise from employment, giving employees a voice, uh, and communicating with employees. No, employee are dealt with either directly or through collective bargaining agreements in the presence of registered trade unions. Now, employee relations encompasses a broader range of work relationship than industrial relations, which are primarily concerned with interaction between management and trade union representative and officials. In the ways in which employees relate to their employers, this broader definition recognizes the shift away from collectivism and toward individualism. Okay? So to give us more details about the topic, let us all welcome our presenter.
Our topic for the day is employee relations. I'm with Miss Remo, who will be discussing the last half. So, what is employee relations? It is the study of rules, regulations, and agreements by which employees are managed both as individuals and as a collective group. The priority given to the individual as opposed to the collective relationship varying between companies depending on the values of the management. It is concerned with how to gain people's commitment to the achievement of the organization's business goals and objectives in a number of different situations. Employee relations management is about ensuring that organizational change is accepted and then implemented. Refers to the interrelationship, both formal and informal, between the regulation of the relationship principally by means of collective bargaining. Employee relations also have a wider scope than industrial relations. Okay, now these are the common questions of employees and employers in the business industry. So, what do you want to get out of working and what do you expect from your employees? What is employer-employee relations? So, originally broadly defined to include the totality of relationships and interactions between employer and employees. From this perspective, it covers all aspects of human resources management. Sometime, however, in the last century, the term has increasingly taken a narrower, more restricted interpretation that largely equates it with unionized employment. So employer-employee relations is the interplay of the necessary processes in maintaining the relationship between employees and management. In the Philippine context, this component of human resource management covers representation, negotiated terms and conditions of employment, and the mechanism for dispute or conflict resolution. Here are some advantages of employee relations. One is raising the skills of their employees. Next is providing high quality services and products, and then giving excellent customer service. This in turn generate high profits, high earnings, and a relatively more secure future for employees. The employee relations is usually limited to the contractual obligation between the employer and employee, communications policy and practice, joint decision making, joint problem solving, collective bargaining, individual grievance, disciplinary policy and practice. The components of employee relations are players, mechanism, external environment, and bargaining power. Now, for players, we have individual employers, individual employees, employee representative bodies, employers association, and public bodies. These players operate in a labor market in which they attempt to protect and advance their respective economic interests relative to each other. Employees in the labor market have interests that is different from the employers, but both have common interests in the survival of employing enterprise. They have a mutual interest in resolving the problem because not to do so will result in mutual destruction. The employee relations players also have expectations of how each will behave towards others. This is referred to as a psychological contract. Mechanism. There are mechanisms available to buyers and sellers of labor services by which will govern the employment relationship and at the same time accommodate their different economic interests. These mechanisms include consultation, employee involvement and participation, communication process, collective bargaining, and legal regulation. For external environment, the selling and buying of labor services also takes place in the context of an external environment. For bargaining power, if a group of workers who have the power to stop an organization's activities are willing to exercise that power and have exercised it successfully in the past, they will have a relatively greater bargaining power. Now, for third-party intervention, in situations where the employer and employees are unable to resolve their collective differences, they may agree voluntarily to seek the assistance of an independent third party. It can take their forms for conciliation, mediation, or arbitration. In conciliation, the role of the third party is to keep two sides talking and assist them to reach their own agreement. So, conciliation is a dispute resolution mechanism whereby the parties to a dispute agree to utilize the services of a conciliator, who then meets with the parties separately in an attempt to resolve their differences. For mediation, a mediator listens to the arguments of the two sides and make recommendations on how their differences might be resolved. The parties are free to accept or reject these recommendations. Arbitration removes from employers and employees control over the settlement of their differences. The arbitrator hears both sides' case and decides the solution to the parties' differences by making an award. Both parties have voluntarily agreed to arbitration are morally obliged but not legally bound to accept the arbitrator's award. Employee involvement and participation. Employee involvement covers a wide range of practices. These are initiated by the management and are designed to increase employee information about and commitment to the organization. Employee involvement concentrates on individual employees and is designed to produce a committed workforce more likely to contribute to the efficient operation of the organization. By introducing employee involvement mechanisms, management seeks to gain the consent of the employees to its proposed actions on the basis of commitment rather control. Now, here are methods of gaining employee cooperation. We have representation or participation, consultations, and team working. Teams working together have the following benefits. It increase job satisfaction, increase motivation and loyalty to the organizations, and ultimately improves business performance. Next, we also have employee share ownership. This method has the following advantages, which motivate staff and encourage them to work harder because they will receive a part of the profit, reduce possible conflict between the workforce and top management, and quality circle. Now, management must also demonstrate a commitment to its employees in terms of job security, pay and other employment conditions, access to training and retraining, the provision of a safe working environment, and a balance between the work and the employees' well-being. For employer association, this is an organization whose membership is composed of employers and whose purpose includes the regulation of relations between employers and their employees or trade unions. So the major functions of employer associations are the direct negotiation of collective agreements with trade unions, assisting its members in the resolution of disputes. It assists their members to resolve disputes by negotiating and operating on their behalf of a dispute procedure with recognized unions, providing general help and advice to its members on industrial relation matters, and representing its members' view and interest to government and other agencies they represent, evidence to governmental inquiries, and provide employers' representatives on a range of bodies such as industrial tribunals and ACAS. So that's it for my report. Next would be Ms. Remo. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So let us now proceed to the next topic, which is grievance. So grievance can be defined as a formal complaint raised by an employee against a fellow employee or manager, or even against the employer. Employees usually file grievances for workplace harassment, discrimination, nepotism, concerns regarding team management, or regarding terms of the employment. They represent the gap between the employee expectation and from what the employee gets from the company. So grievance has to be properly addressed because it lowers the motivation and performance of the employee, and it also affects the work environment. One of the most common examples of workplace grievance is sanitation and cleanliness. So employees often complain of eating areas and bathrooms not being cleaned properly after use. So this is an example of a grievance. Or another example is where an employee has claimed reimbursement but hasn't been reimbursed accurately or timely. Here, let us enumerate the purpose of grievance procedure. First, it ensures that fair and consistent treatment are given to employees. Second, it reduces the risk of unpredictable action. Third, it clarifies how grievances will be dealt with. Fourth, is to maintain a good employee relations environment. And lastly, to help the employer to avoid disputes. In managing employee complaints, management is guided by a number of principles such as fairness, consistency, representation, and promptness. So let us now proceed with labor or trade unions in business organizations. So labor union or trade union is defined as the organization formed by workers from related fields that work for the common interest of its members. They help workers in issues like fairness of pay, good working environment, hours of work, and other benefits. They represent a cluster of workers and provide a link between the management and workers. So the main purpose of this union is to look into the grievances of wagers and present a collective voice in front of the management. Hence, it acts as the medium of communication between the workers and management. Regulation of relations, settlement of grievances, raising new demands on behalf of workers, collective bargaining, and negotiations are the other key principal functions that these trade unions perform. So what are the rights of the employees? First is the security of tenure. Second is the living wage and just share in the fruits of production. Next is the humane working conditions, followed by the self-organization, and then collective bargaining, the right to concerted action including the right to strike, and lastly, to participate in policy and decision-making processes. So what are labor unions for? So first, it is a manifestation of industrial democracy. It represents individual employees and it helps employees to voice out their concerns to the management through bargaining and negotiation. So the functions of trade union are enumerated as follows: power, economic regulation, job regulation, member services, and self-fulfillment. So here's a picture of the statistics of the trends in the unionization rate and total number of union members as for the private and public sector as provided by the Bureau of Labor Relations from the union registration data. Next is collective bargaining. So this is defined as the process of negotiations between the company and the representatives of the union. So the goal is for the management and the union to reach a contract agreement which is to put into place for a specified period of time. Once this time is up, a new contract is negotiated. In collective bargaining process, both parties are legally bound to bargain in good faith. This means that they have a mutual obligation to participate actively in the deliberations and indicate a desire to find a basis for the collective bargaining agreement. The collective bargaining process have 5 main steps. The first step is the preparation of both parties. So the negotiation team should consist of individuals with knowledge of the organization and the skills to be an effective negotiator. An understanding of the working conditions and dissatisfaction with working conditions is an important part of this preparation step. Establishing objectives for the negotiation and reviewing the old contract are key components to this step. The management team should also prepare and anticipate union demands to better prepare for compromises. The second step of the process involves both parties agreeing on how the timelines will be set for the negotiations. In addition, setting ground rules for how the negotiation will work is an important step as it lays the foundation for the work to come. In the third step, each party comes to the table with proposals. It will likely involve initial opening statements and options that exist to resolve any situations that exist. The key to a successful proposal is to come to the table with a let's make it work attitude. An initial discussion is taken place, and then each party generally goes back to determine which request it can honor and which it cannot. At this point, another meeting is generally set up to continue further discussions. So once the group comes to an agreement or settlement, which may take many months and proposals, a new contract is written and the union members vote on whether to accept the agreement or not. If the union doesn't agree, the process begins all over again. Why collective bargaining? Collective bargaining is a highly flexible method of decision making compared to legislative, judicial, or any public administrative process. Collective bargaining as an instrument for applying equity or social justice to the industrial setting of work environment. It also means to ensure the participation of employees in policy decision making, and it provides an orderly system to present and resolve grievances and disputes in the workplace. In majority, if not all, employees agree to the terms and conditions of their employment based on the agreement. So after thorough negotiation with the management and the employees, there comes the collective bargaining agreement. So collective bargaining agreement or CBA is defined as a contract which is the result of an extensive negotiation process between the parties regarding topics such as wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment. According to Article 253 of the Labor Code, when there is a collective bargaining agreement, the duty to bargain collectively shall also mean that neither party shall terminate nor modify such agreement during its lifetime. However, either party can serve a written notice to terminate or modify the agreement at least 60 days prior to its expiration date. It shall be the duty of both parties to keep the status quo and to continue in full force and effect the terms and conditions of the existing agreement during the 60-day period and or until a new agreement is reached by the parties. So here's a picture of the existing collective bargaining agreements by industry as provided by the records transmitted by the Dole regional offices to the Bureau of Labor Relations. So to end this chapter, let me read this quote. Every person must, in the exercise of his rights and in the performance of his duties, act with justice, give everyone his due, and observe honesty and good faith. because employee relations is human relations. So that's all for chapter 10. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, it is important for us to consider, of course, the employee communications, no, the two-way communications, because it is critical, no. It is essential component of any change management strategy. So employees need to know what is proposed and how it will affect them if any changes in terms and conditions of employment. So human resource processes such as contingent compensation, working techniques, technologies and products and services or organization are proposed. So people often resist change, no, because they are unsure of what the change is or what it means for them. So employees will be more committed to the business, of course, if they understand what the organization has accomplished or is attempting to accomplish, as well as how this helped them. No, good communication build trust because companies take the time to explain what they're going and where they are doing it. And this benefits the good communication. However, it will be fully realized if employees are given a voice, the ability to remark on and respond to the information they receive from the management. Okay, so I think that's it for part number 10.